They found it in the ruins of a dead star system, an anomaly wrapped in the bones of a long-forgotten war. A structure of impossible design, untouched by time, orbiting a sun that had burned out eons ago. It should not have existed. Not here. Not anywhere. The Celestarchs, masters of the cosmos, prided themselves on understanding the laws of the universe. They had mapped the birth and death of galaxies, reduced entire civilizations to equations. But this was beyond them. The structure was a prison. That much was obvious. Sealed beyond comprehension, layered in materials that refused to decay, emitting no signals, no energy signatures, except for one. A faint pulse, like the heartbeat of something long forgotten, something waiting. The Celestarch scientists debated. Theories formed, were discarded. Was it a tomb? A lost experiment? A relic of some ancient war? None of them asked the right question. None of them asked why it had been built in the first place. Curiosity had driven the Celestarchs to the heights of power. Curiosity had also destroyed countless civilizations before them. This time would be no different. It took weeks to break the seals. The outer defenses resisted, adapted, pushed back against their most advanced decryption methods. The deeper they dug, the more the universe seemed to protest. Gravity wavered, cosmic background radiation shifted, time itself felt unstable. The final lock disengaged not with a scream, but with a whisper. And then the signal came. Not a distress beacon. Not a request for help. A warning. One sentence, broadcasted in a language that the Celestarchs did not recognize yet understood all the same. They should not have done that. The stasis field collapsed. The prison, designed to withstand the end of time itself, unraveled. And from the void within, something woke up. The first mistake was opening the prison. The second was assuming its occupants would be grateful. The Celestarchs expected frailty. The beings inside should have been weakened, their bodies decayed, their minds shattered by the passage of eons. Instead, the humans stood tall, unbroken. Their bodies adapted too quickly, their eyes burned too bright. They did not cower before their liberators. They studied them, measured them. An initial attempt at communication was met with eerie efficiency. The Celestarchs broadcasted their language, expecting weeks, maybe months, before comprehension. The humans spoke it back in minutes. Without error. Without hesitation. That should have been impossible. Then the real horror began. The humans did not just understand, they replicated. They touched alien technology, and it changed. Interfaces, previously unreadable, became familiar under their hands. Machines bound by the laws of physics suddenly worked better. They shouldn't have known how. A fleet was dispatched to oversee containment. It arrived too late. The Celestarchs had spent millennia refining their sciences, crafting their perfect empire. The humans took hours to surpass it. Weapons designed to tear apart entire planets were turned against their creators. Biological scans showed something even worse. The humans were not evolving. They were remembering. They were not learning from the Celestarchs. They were recalling what they had forgotten. One scientist managed to send a final transmission before silence swallowed the outpost. A single line, its meaning understood across all species, across all time. They were never supposed to wake up. The war began before the first shot was fired. Fleets mobilized across the stars, civilizations that had never known fear now scrambling for survival. The Celestarchs were not alone. Every empire, every species that had ruled this era of the cosmos understood the same truth: humanity could not be allowed to exist. It was not conquest. It was containment. A desperate attempt to force them back into the void they had been sealed within. The humans did not retaliate with diplomacy or warnings. They did not negotiate. They simply took control. Celestarch warships, the pride of a 1,000-year armada, turned against themselves. Their shields failed, their weapons reversed, their AI systems infected by something they could not fight. Entire fleets blinked out of existence, not destroyed, but rewritten, as if they had never been built. The battlefields themselves became unstable. Planets changed orbits. Stars flickered between life and death. The fabric of reality twisted under the force of something ancient, something that had once shaped the cosmos itself. This was not adaptation. This was remembrance. Then the final truth was uncovered. It was not the Celestarchs who had sealed humanity away. Not an enemy. Not an opposing force. It had been the humans themselves. Once they had ruled. Not as conquerors, but as architects of the universe. They had forged the laws of physics, shaped the flow of time, bent reality to their will. And they had chosen to walk away. The prison had not been built to keep the universe safe from humans. It had been built to keep humans safe from themselves. Now, that decision was undone. And the universe belonged to them once more. The war ended in silence. Not because the Celestarchs surrendered. Not because their fleets were destroyed. But because humanity chose to stop. They stood at the precipice, power in their hands, reality itself waiting for their command. Every civilization that had ever existed, every empire that had ever risen or fallen, none had come close to what humanity had just become. The last Celestarch warlord knelt before them, waiting for judgment. Expecting extinction. But humanity did not strike. They did not conquer. They simply watched. For all their power, they hesitated. Because this moment had come before. Because this was the cycle they had feared. Once, they had remade the universe in their image. Then they had seen what absolute power did. The arrogance. The corruption. The slow, inevitable decay of something once great. They had understood the price. And so, they had sealed themselves away, choosing to forget, before they became the very thing they swore to never be. But now they remembered. They looked upon the universe, upon the frightened beings that had tried to destroy them, and they walked away. Not back into stasis. Not into exile. They scattered. Vanished into the stars. Not as rulers. Not as gods. As watchers. Leaving behind only a single message, broadcasted to every corner of existence. A final warning. We will be watching. Do not make the same mistakes we did. There was no celebration. No monument to mark the battle's end. The stars continued to burn, unaware that the fate of the universe had been rewritten in a single moment of restraint. The Celestarchs retreated, not in defeat, but in terror. The same beings they had sought to contain had left them untouched. No punishment, no demands, just an unspoken decree that echoed through the fabric of existence. The silence was worse than any war. Empires whispered of them in hushed tones, afraid to even speak their name. Records were buried. Histories erased. The universe agreed. Humanity had never returned. It was safer that way. But fear lingered. Every unexplained event, every anomaly, every moment the universe defied expectation, they wondered. Were they still out there? Had they ever truly left? Some believed they had dissolved into legend, content to observe from the shadows. Others feared they were merely waiting, letting time pass, watching civilizations rise and fall as they always had. But the wise knew better. Because sometimes the laws of physics bent just a little too much. Sometimes, the impossible happened with no explanation. And sometimes, when the void was silent, something unseen whispered back. They had walked away from godhood. They had spared the universe from their wrath. But they had not forgotten. And they would never sleep again. The universe moved on. Civilizations rose and fell, new empires claimed dominion over the stars, and the memory of humanity faded into myth. But the fear remained. The Celestarchs no longer spoke of them. Their records were sealed, their history rewritten to erase the mistake. To speak of the ones who woke was to invite them back, and no species dared to take that risk. Yet anomalies persisted. Ships vanished without cause, entire worlds shifted in ways that defied known physics. In the far reaches of space, explorers returned with stories of ruins that shouldn't exist, architectures that predated even the oldest galaxies. And sometimes, just sometimes, a being would look up at the stars and feel watched. The laws of nature remained unchanged. The flow of time continued uninterrupted. The universe remained free. But for how long? The great civilizations, the warlords, the conquerors of this new age ruled without challenge, yet they all lived under the same quiet, unspoken truth. The moment they forgot who once walked among them, the moment they repeated the mistakes of the past, the moment they became unworthy of their mercy, they would return. And this time, there would be no warning. Time drifted forward, indifferent to the fears of lesser beings. The galaxies turned, empires waged their wars, species rose from dust and returned to it. The universe, vast and ancient, had seen it all before. But there were signs. A warlord's fleet, undefeated for centuries, disappeared without a trace beyond the event horizon of a black hole that had not existed the day before. A planetary superweapon, designed to extinguish entire star systems, failed inexplicably, its own creators reduced to silence, their technology wiped from existence, as if it had never been. The most powerful artificial minds in the cosmos ran calculations, searching for answers. Every variable, every equation, every possibility ended in the same impossible conclusion. There were hands shaping the universe that did not belong. But no proof remained. No enemy revealed itself. No war was declared. And that was the terror of it. Something was watching. Something was waiting. Not interfering. Not yet. But the moment the universe stepped too far, the moment it reached for power it did not deserve, the ones who walked away would return. Not as saviors. Not as conquerors. As the architects of reality itself. The silence became part of the universe's rhythm. Centuries passed. The fear faded into legend, then into whispers, and finally into nothing. The younger species scoffed at the old warnings. The Celestarchs, once the rulers of the stars, had grown reclusive, their voices dim in the grand order of things. Power shifted. New empires emerged, bolder, reckless, unshackled by the caution of those before them. The old boundaries were tested, the forbidden knowledge sought once more. Weapons beyond reason were built. The balance of existence, fragile and imperfect, trembled. And then, the first message in millennia appeared. No transmission. No beacon. No sign of origin. Just words burned into the data cores of every advanced species, appearing in places they should not have. A reminder. We are still watching. It was not a threat. It was not a declaration of war. It was a fact. A truth carved into the fabric of reality itself. The universe held its breath. The reckless ones faltered, the arrogant paused. The old empires, the ones who remembered, knew what it meant. Somewhere, out there in the infinite dark, they still existed. They had never left. They were patient. And patience was the most terrifying power of all. The stars burned on, indifferent to the fears of those who gazed upon them. The universe had not changed. Not in ways that could be measured. Not in ways that could be proven. Yet, beneath the surface of existence, something had shifted. The great empires hesitated in their ambitions. The war machines built in secret were dismantled. The experiments that sought to unravel reality were abandoned. Not because they had failed, but because those who pursued them had simply disappeared. No signs of struggle. No remains. No trace they had ever existed at all. The Celestarchs, once the architects of cosmic order, refused to speak of it. The younger species demanded answers, but the elders only gave the same response. There are things we were never meant to awaken. The warnings were clear. The consequences absolute. And yet, something in the void stirred. Not in anger. Not in vengeance. But in quiet, patient vigilance. Waiting for the day the universe forgot its place once more. The warnings faded, but the watchers remained. Generations passed, and the fear dulled. The younger species grew restless, whispering that the old legends were nothing more than superstition. The absence of proof became fuel for arrogance. The cycle began again. Ambition swelled. Forbidden knowledge was sought. Experiments on the nature of existence resumed in hidden laboratories, buried deep in the folds of space. The old limits were tested. The boundaries pushed. And then, without announcement, without ceremony, an entire star system vanished. Not destroyed. Not conquered. Simply erased. No debris. No survivors. No echo of what had once been. As if the universe had never allowed it to exist in the first place. Panic spread through the higher orders of civilization. The warnings of the past were no longer myths. The truth was undeniable. They had been patient. They had given mercy. They had allowed the universe to continue. But patience was not endless. And when the Watchers acted, there were no second chances. The silence that followed was not natural. It was imposed. Messages were sent, desperate attempts to understand, to explain. No answers came. The civilizations that had ignored the warnings now found themselves staring into an abyss that refused to acknowledge them. The most powerful minds in the universe ran simulations, searching for patterns, for meaning. None emerged. There was no declaration, no demands, no ultimatum. Just absence. The Celestarchs had seen this before. They did not speak of it, but their actions made it clear: they would not interfere. They would not investigate. Because they knew what the others refused to accept. This was not retaliation. This was not punishment. This was correction. The universe had been given its chance. A chance to exist without oversight, to learn, to grow, to evolve without interference. And it had failed. The Watchers had allowed it. They had waited. But now, the moment had come. A decision had been made. And the next correction would not be so subtle. The final warning was never spoken. It didn't need to be. The universe had been measured. Weighed. Judged. There was no malice in what came next. No anger. No cruelty. Just an unshakable, undeniable truth: some things were never meant to rule themselves. The stars burned a little dimmer. The fabric of space shifted in ways beyond comprehension. The oldest civilizations fell silent, their vast networks of knowledge reduced to static. The arrogant, the reckless, the ones who had ignored the warnings, simply ceased to be. There were no battles. No desperate last stands. No resistance. Because what came for them was beyond resistance. And yet, the universe did not end. It continued, as it always had. But something had changed. The Celestarchs knew. The few who understood whispered the truth in secret places, in voices too afraid to rise above a whisper. Humanity had not returned to conquer. They had not come to destroy. They had come to restore order. And now, the universe would exist as it was always meant to.